Hi guys, this is TC Lee from the Tank Club, and I'm here today to show you my Kynes Aegis off-tank healer hybrid build. Now this build is designed mostly for Kynes Aegis Hardmode. You could use this in regular veteran Kynes Aegis also. I just wanted to basically clear up some of the common confusion regarding the off-tank third healer role, and the general concept is for the off-tank to play as a healer. And this is because there is very little to do as the off-tank from 50% onwards on all three bosses. There's also quite high damage encounters, and playing as a third healer will allow the buff healer to remain as a buff healer in buff sets. For the really top tier teams, this means like a Warden, a Sorcerer, a Templar off-tank in light armor, healing sets. This is simply too risky and not viable for the majority of the community, the majority of the teams out there that are trying to work on this sort of content. You can be a capable off-tank healer in standard tank sets, and I'm about to show you that now. So let's get to it. So first of all, I'm just going to go over quickly attributes. So we're using 64 points into health. We're using the Clockwork Citrus Fillet and the Ritual Mundus Stone. We'll also be using Spell Power Potions, and this is mainly just for boss fights, and this is when we're set up in our healing setup. So if we look at using a potion there, and our stats there, 17, just over 17k magicka, still got nearly 35k health, and we've still got a bit of stamina. Magic recovery is 2676, which is quite important. Spell damage and spell critical are not on the high side, but you've got to remember we are still an off-tank, and we're still in tank gear as well. The Ritual Mundus Stone is going to give us increased healing done, and we're combining that also with some Divines pieces to increase the percentage. The Clockwork Citrus Fillet, we would only probably use this on the final boss after the adder's been killed, but that is just to kind of increase our magic recovery a bit further because we don't need the stamina any longer. So for this particular build, I'm a Nord because I'm just a standard tank. The passives aren't particularly useful for us being a healing off tank, but they are useful for us being a tank. You could literally be any race apart from Wood Elf, I would say, for this particular build. You can choose whatever race you want. It's completely up to you. Something sustain based would be fine. Breton would be fine. A Nord's fine. Imperial, Argonian. It's up to you. Normal kind of standard tank classes such as an Argonian might be quite good because they've got healing passives and also resource passives, so that might be quite good if you are already an Argonian tank. Converting to this particular build would be a little bit easier. For this particular build, we're a Dragon Knight. You don't have to be a Dragon Knight. You could quite easily be absolutely any class depending on what your group needs. If your group wants you to output more healing, you could be a Warden tank, a Templar tank. You could be a Sorc as well. Sorcs are absolutely fine. It's all about what your group needs. Your main tank's going to struggle to keep up stagger on a boss, so if you want to keep stagger on the boss for the increased damage, then it's a good idea for you to use the off tank as a DK. Maybe use a different class for the main tank. Skill bars for the Warden, the Sorc, the Templar, everything else are on my Discord. Make sure you check out the Tank Club Discord. So we're going to talk first of all about the boss gear setup, and like I said before, this is mainly for hard mode. So the first set we're going to use is Alkosh. We're going to be using Alkosh on the weapons and the jewellery. The traits are kind of up to you. For me, I've gone with Decisive for the increased ultimate. Absorb Magicka because as a healer we're going to be using a lot of Magicka abilities, so that's quite important to try and generate a bit of Magicka when we are on our sword and board bar. Alkosh shield well fitted to reduce the cost of our sprint mostly, and just when we're dodge rolling, when we are taking ads and on the trash fights. On the back bar, I'm using the Maelstrom Restoration Staff. I've got that empowered with a weakening enchant. You could use Absorb Magic enchant, you could use whatever enchant you need on this. If you don't want to use powered, you can use something else as well. And the reason for using this is to try and increase our sustain when we're using regeneration. So we're going to be using Radiating Regeneration, so this is going to help us restore a lot of the Magicka that we're going to be using because we have got quite low Magicka pool because we are still a tank. If you're not really confident that you're going to be able to use your Alkosh proc on your front bar when you need to, you could use an Alkosh Restoration Staff as well, so that's up to you. If you're comfortable in switching bar to use the Synergy to proc your Alkosh, then use the Maelstrom for the sustain. If not, stick with the Alkosh Resto. The next set we're using is the Sentinel of Rakugar. You could also use Bogdan, you could also use Earthgore, and you could also use Symphony. It's possible to also use Shadow Rend if you need a little extra debuff. If you want to see more about those monster sets, you can see my other video on tank monster sets. Link for that one is in the description. So we're using this one purely because it's increasing our healing done, it's healing, it's giving resources, and the group is massively stacked up, especially in phase 3, which is when this actual build is most necessary. Phase 3 on the last boss when you're on the bottom floor, that's when this build is really useful. So we've gone with Infused and Tri-Stack because, like I said before, we are still tanking. We're taking adds, we're doing bits of tanking, so we are still needed to be a little bit tanky. So using Infused big pieces with Tri-Stack, and all the small pieces are going to be Divines with Magicka. Second set is Eben, and that's because we're trying to increase our group's max health. Gives us our group gets 1,000 extra max health, which is quite important. Again, for phase 3. On the last boss in hard mode, that is quite important to have that extra health just to keep everybody alive. So we're using again big pieces Infused with Tri-Stat, small pieces are all Divines with Magicka, and our jewellery is Infused Magicka Recovery. You could use some arcane pieces, you could also use some spell damage. Since we are a tank, the recovery is quite important because we are going to struggle with sustaining with such a low Magicka pool if we don't have quite a lot of incoming resources. So onto the skills. On our healing bar, so this is the setup we're going to be using for our healing bar. We're going to be using healing springs. A normal healer would run illustrious healing, but they don't usually need the sustain. We do need the sustain, so we're going to restore Magicka every time an ally is healed. So we're going to be casting this on our group. We're going to be getting some resources back. The heal is slightly lower and for a lower duration, but we're getting Magicka back. Using energy orbs, we're going to put that straight down the middle of our group. It's going to give a nice heal and a synergy that's going to give a heal and resources to our group as well. Combat Prayer is more of a burst heal, and it's going to make sure that everyone is definitely getting the Minor Berserk, Minor Resolve, and we're using this as a burst heal, pointing towards the main tank generally, especially for the last boss. Radiating Regeneration, a nice big heal over time, and this will also give us our resources back when we're using the Maelstrom Resto, so that's quite important. And then we've got Mystic Guard, which we are using on both bars, and this is so that we can link ourselves up with the main tank, and we'll be taking some of the damage off them. That's why we have to kind of still run as a tanky build to help us survive while we're taking some of the tank's damage. We've got Reviving Barrier generally. This is mostly just for the Magicka recovery from the passives. You won't generally use it, but I suppose in an emergency situation, if you had no other option and you had to use it, then you could use this. It's going to give you an 18k shield, and it's going to give a bit of a heal as well. Front bar with a sword and board, so we're going to be using Pierced Armour. You could use Ransack as well. That's kind of up to you. You're only really going to be using this when you are taunting adds on certain fights. So on boss 1 when you taunt the Sea Adders and the Griffins, on boss 2 when you taunt the 3 adds that spawn in through the portals, and on the last boss where you taunt in the Lieutenant. Next we've got Stone Giant. Now this is quite a big buff for your group. It's going to give your group around about 2 to 4k increased damage depending on what classes they play. We're using this on the off tank because the main tank will have quite a tricky time sustaining this in the execute phase on boss 3. So we're trying to keep this up on the healer off tank. It's not too bad, and it also drops your block, so it makes it safer to run on the off tank. Igneous Shield, it's going to give a group shield, it's going to give you a shield, and it's going to give major mending as well. You could essentially use Fragmented Shield to increase your major mending uptime, which is going to increase the amount of healing you're doing for your group as well, so that's kind of up to you. So Fragmented Shield is also a good idea to boost your major mending uptime. Overflowing Altar, that's just going to give everybody minor lifesteal and a nice big synergy in case they need it for the heal. Then we've got Mystic Guard again, because that's going to be double barred. If we only one bar it, then we can't swap bar while we've got it activated on the main tank, or else the beam will drop off and it could kill the main tank. And then we've got our main ultimate, the Aggressive Horn. So this is the ultimate we're always going to use pretty much for every single situation, unless, as I said before, there's a real emergency and you've got to use the barrier. This will be the one that you're always going to use. So that's the healing part of the build. For Trash pulls, you will generally be just a normal tank. You're going to switch your Ebon to Defiled Dragon. That's going to give the group the minor fracture and minor breach so that they do more damage to the ads and kill them faster. Makes you a little bit more tanky, you got a little bit more stamina, especially if you've lowered your health with alternative food. You can use whatever trait you want. Sturdy is probably going to be quite useful for ad pulls. You're going to use the Vulcan as well, and that's going to give a debuff to all the ads. You just have to be very careful, because if you get hit by an ad before you reach the place where you're going to stack the ads, this is going to be procced in the wrong location. So be very, very careful where you get hit. When you taunt enemies range taunt, then dodge roll into the location where you want to be. That will stop you from proccing your Vulcan too early and in the wrong location, and then you'll make sure that this gets covered over all the ads like it's supposed to be. You can just trait these and enchant these however you like. You want an Infused Crusher, Alkosh, Lightning Staff on your back bar, and then you've just got the same shield and the same one-hander as you did for the healing build. So for boss 1, 2 and the ad pulls, you might want to use your normal Bewitched Sugar Skulls food. That'll give you more stamina than Magicka and will allow you to be an actual tank. Once the Lieutenant has died on the last boss, that's when it would be a good idea to switch to your Citrus Fillet food, and that's just going to increase your sustain quite a lot. Onto champion points. You could use the same champion points as the main tank uses. Those are on my Discord. For this particular build, running as a healer, I've slightly tweaked some of the CP, so we've got 72 in Ironclad, 56 Thick Skinned, 64 Hardy, 49 Ellie Defender, and then we've gone for a few points in Bastion to increase the size of the shield that we're casting with Igneous Shield. Obviously, if you were on a class that doesn't have a group buff shield, you wouldn't bother with the Bastion points, you'd maybe assign them elsewhere. For the green CP, we've got 40 Warlord, 25 Sprinter, that's so we can maintain our speed with the group for the ad pulls. 64 Arcanist and 27 Tenacity. 48 Tumbling and 66 Shadow Ward. For the blue CP, obviously we're trying to boost our healing, so we've got 64 Blessed, 66 Elfborn, 43 Elemental Expert and 16 Spell Erosion. Then we've got 16 Staff Expert, 28 Master at Arms, and 37 in Thaumaturge. So with this particular build, you're going to be responsible for maintaining Alkosh and Stone Giant for your group, and then you've got all your back bar heals over time just to kind of keep up a little boost of healing on your group. With Stone Giant, when you've got your 3 stacks of Stone Giant active on the target, more or less every 3 skills you need to be back on your front bar to recast it again. So just a bit of an overview of the build. So that is the Kynes Aegis Hardmode off-tank healer hybrid build. And like I said before, this is the much safer way to play in this particular trial and add in some extra group support, because there is very, very little to do. Once the ads are killed on the first boss, there's no more ads from 50%. You haven't really got much to do. So you might as well add some healing, incorporate this into the fight, just to make it extra safe for your group and to give you actually something to actually do. And so your healers can play as they're supposed to. So you've got your buff healer that's able to maintain doing their buffs because they've got the extra healing from you being there, and it just makes things a lot more simple. On the second boss again, once we got to that 50% mark, the ads stop spawning in, so then you've got very little to do, but the main tank does start taking more damage when you've got the Storm Twins spawning in. They hit quite hard, so it's good to have some extra healing for you for those, and for the group that are taking the damage from the meteors and other things. Obviously on the last boss, to play it safer, you don't essentially need 2 tanks, but it is safer to use 2, and you never know if something goes wrong. Rather than wiping, if you've got somebody who is able to be kind of a tank, in this case it would be the off-tank who's still able to tank stuff. It just means it's a lot easier, it's a lot safer, and your group can still maintain a fight even if the main tank was to die. But also, it prevents the risk of the main tank dying if they have to take both the lieutenant and the main boss. They can't just take the main boss, the off-tank can take the lieutenant, and you are more than capable of tanking the lieutenant in this particular setup. For really, really top level off tanks, they might be able to do it in light armor, but this is just a safer way of doing it, and it just prevents any risk. There's no need for the risk So this is really going to help any groups that are working on that and want to remove that risk but still have the off-tank providing some useful assistance to the group. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you liked the video. Please let me know in the comments below what you think. If you haven't joined already, make sure you check out the Tank Club Discord. The link is in the description below. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye for now.